All right, everybody, today we have a corporate revenge story that plays out not over weeks or months, but over 23 years. A guy joins a mid-sized manufacturing company right out of college and quietly buys discounted employee stock every single paycheck for over 2 decades. Nobody notices. Nobody cares. He's just the steady, reliable operations guy who keeps the factory floor running. Then the company founder retires, and his arrogant son takes the wheel. The son starts gutting the old guard, demoting veterans, replacing them with his business school buddies. Our guy gets demoted from VP of operations to senior associate. That's when he walks into the next board meeting. Because his accumulated shares, they make him the third largest individual shareholder in the entire company, and he uses every single one of those votes. This is a masterclass in patience. Let's get into it. I quietly bought employee stock. Every paycheck for 23 years. When the founder's son took over and demoted me, I showed up to the board meeting as the third largest shareholder and voted to remove him. I've been sitting on this story for about 4 months now, and I think enough has settled that I can finally tell it without getting emotional. Though honestly, even writing this out, I can feel the adrenaline creeping back in. Some things stay with you. My name's Garrett. I'm 45 years old. And until recently, I was the vice president of operations at a mid-sized manufacturing company in the Midwest. I'm not going to name the company, legal reasons obviously, but I'll tell you that we make industrial components. Valves, fittings, coupling assemblies, that kind of thing. Not glamorous. Not the kind of company that ends up in business magazines, but the kind of company that keeps other companies running. If your water treatment plant works, if your HVAC system doesn't leak, if the hydraulic press at your local factory operates without blowing a seal, there's a decent chance our parts are in there somewhere. I joined this company when I was 22. Fresh out of college with a degree in industrial engineering from a state school most people have never heard of, and a mountain of student loan debt. I got hired as a production floor coordinator, which is a fancy title for the guy who makes sure the machines are running and nobody loses a finger. Starting salary was $38,000. In 2003. Not terrible for the area, but it wasn't buying me a boat. The company was founded by a man I'll call Ray Whitmore. Ray was old school. And I mean genuinely old school. He'd started the company in 1974 in a rented warehouse with 3 employees and a single CNC lathe that broke down every other Tuesday. By the time I joined, the company had grown to about 400 employees, 2 manufacturing facilities, and annual revenue in the neighborhood of $80 million. Ray was still running the show, still walking the factory floor every morning at 6 a.m., with a coffee in one hand and a clipboard in the other. He knew every machine operator by name. He knew their kids' names. He'd been to their weddings and their funerals and everything in between. Ray saw something in me early on. I don't say that to brag. I think what he saw was that I actually liked the work. I liked being on the floor. I liked understanding how a raw steel rod becomes a precision valve body through 12 separate machining operations. I liked solving problems. When a production bottleneck appeared, I didn't just flag it for someone else. I dug into it, figured out the root cause, and came back with a fix. Ray noticed that. Within 3 years, I was promoted to production supervisor. 2 years after that, plant manager of our secondary facility. And by the time I was 32, 10 years in, Ray made me VP of operations. I was responsible for both plants, all production scheduling, quality assurance, supply chain coordination, and about 240 direct and indirect reports. I loved that job. Not every day. Some days were brutal, and there were stretches where I worked 60-hour weeks and came home so tired I'd fall asleep on the couch with my shoes on. But I loved walking through a plant that was running well. There's a rhythm to a good manufacturing operation, almost like music. Machines humming, forklifts moving in predictable patterns, the quality check station flowing without backup. When it all clicks, it's beautiful. My wife Laura thinks I'm insane for saying that. She's probably right. Now here's the part that matters. The part that set everything in motion 23 years before it paid off. When I started at the company in 2003, Ray had an employee stock purchase program. It was simple. Every employee could elect to have up to 10% of their gross pay deducted and used to purchase company stock at a 15% discount from the current assessed value. The company wasn't publicly traded. It was privately held. so the stock value was determined by an annual independent appraisal. The shares had limited liquidity. You couldn't just sell them on an exchange, but there was an internal buyback program that let employees cash out shares at fair market value once a year if they wanted to. Most employees either didn't participate or participated at a low level, 1 or 2%. The discount was nice, but the stock was illiquid, and people needed their paychecks for, living. Mortgage payments, car notes, groceries, kid stuff. I signed up at the maximum, 10%, from my very first paycheck. Okay, hold on. What Garrett just casually mentioned is actually insane. 10% of his gross pay, starting at 22, on a salary of $38,000. That's $3,800 a year going into company stock he can't easily sell. At 22. When most of us were spending our paychecks on ramen and bad furniture from Craigslist. This isn't some Wall Street power move. This is a 22-year-old kid eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch every day so he could buy stock in a valve company. And he did it for 23 years. Every single paycheck. Keep that in your head as this story unfolds. I know what you're thinking. Why? Why would a 22-year-old making 38 grand a year put 10% into illiquid stock in a manufacturing company? And the honest answer is kind of embarrassing. My dad told me to. My dad was a machinist his whole life, worked at a tool and die shop for 31 years, never made more than $55,000 in a single year. But he retired comfortably because his company had a similar stock purchase program, and he'd been putting money in since he was 25. When he retired, his shares were worth just over $400,000. Not life-changing rich, but enough to supplement his pension and live without worry. He sat me down the week before I started my job and said, "Garrett, if they offer you stock at a discount, you buy it. Every paycheck. You don't think about it. You don't touch it. You don't sell it when things get tight. You buy it like it's oxygen and you put it in a drawer and you forget it exists. 20 years from now, you'll thank me." So I did. And for 23 years, I basically forgot it existed. Well, not entirely. I got statements every year showing my accumulated shares and their appraised value. I watched the numbers grow. Slowly at first. When I was making 38 grand, 10% was only about $320 a month. But as I got promoted and my salary grew, I was making $162,000 by the time I became VP. That 10% became a much larger number. And the stock itself appreciated. The company grew. Revenue went from 80 million when I started to about 220 million by last year. The share price, as determined by the annual appraisal, had roughly quadrupled over my tenure. I never sold a single share. Not one. Not when Laura and I bought our house. Not when we had our son. Not when we had our daughter. Not when the transmission on my truck blew and the repair was $2,200. Not when the recession hit in 2008 and Laura lost her job for 6 months. Every time I thought about cashing out some shares, I heard my dad's voice in my head. "You don't touch it. You buy it like oxygen." So I bought, and bought, and bought for 23 years. Now let me tell you about Junior. Ray Whitmore had one son. I'll call him Nolan, but everyone at the company called him Junior behind his back. And honestly, some people said it to his face. Junior was about 5 years younger than me. He'd grown up watching his dad build this company, but he hadn't really participated in it. He went to a private university, got an MBA, and spent a few years at a consulting firm where he mostly made PowerPoint presentations and told other companies how to run more efficiently without ever having run anything himself. Junior had been around the company off and on for years. He'd show up at the annual holiday party in a suit that cost more than most of our floor workers made in a week. He'd shake hands and make small talk that always circled back to his MBA or his consulting experience. He once told me at a company barbecue that our production scheduling system was antiquated and that we should implement a real-time demand-responsive allocation model. I asked him what that meant in practical terms. He stared at me for about 3 seconds and said, "It's about optimizing throughput." That's not an answer. That's a sentence from a textbook. But I smiled and nodded because he was the founder's son. Ray started slowing down around 2023. He was 72, and you could see it. He'd been this tireless force for decades, but the years were catching up. He stopped doing the morning floor walks. He delegated more. He started talking about retirement, and everyone knew what was coming. Junior was going to take over. It happened in early 2025. Ray officially retired as CEO and chairman of the board. He stayed on as a board member, He still owned about 31%, the single largest individual stake, but stepped back from day-to-day operations. Junior was named CEO. The first month was quiet. Junior spent it assessing the organization, walking around, having long meetings with outside consultants, sending company-wide emails about entering a new chapter of growth and innovation. Standard stuff. Nobody loved it, but nobody panicked. We figured he'd settle in and let us do our jobs. We were wrong. Quick timeout. I want everybody to notice something about this story so far. Garrett has been at this company for 23 years. He started on the production floor. He worked his way up to VP of operations. He knows every machine, every process, every bottleneck, every vendor relationship, every single thing that makes this company function. Junior has an MBA and some consulting slides. And Junior just became CEO. That right there, that gap between institutional knowledge and inherited authority, is a ticking bomb. Garrett doesn't know it yet, but the fuse is already lit. Back to him. Month 2 is when Junior started making moves. Real moves. He brought in 3 guys from his MBA program. I'll call them the trio, because that's what the floor workers called them. One was named Blake, one was Preston, and one was Keith. Blake was installed as Chief Strategy Officer, which is a title that sounds important but means nothing if you don't have a strategy. Preston became Director of Operational Excellence, a title that made me physically cringe since I'd been doing operational excellence without the title for 20 years. And Keith was made Head of Workforce Optimization, which is corporate speak for the guy who decides who gets fired. The trio were Junior's guys. They'd gone to school with him, they'd worked at the same consulting firm, and they spoke the same language. A language made entirely of buzzwords and frameworks and acronyms that nobody on the factory floor had ever heard of or needed to hear. They were in their mid-30s, wore slim-fit suits to a manufacturing company, and walked through the plant like tourists visiting a zoo. I once saw Preston stop in front of a CNC lathe and take a picture of it with his phone, like it was a landmark. I've never wanted to scream more in my life, but the real damage wasn't the trio themselves. It was what their hiring meant for everyone else. Junior needed room, budget room, title room, org chart room. And to make room for his guys, he started pushing out the old guard, not firing. He was too smart for that, or his lawyers were. Demoting, restructuring, realigning roles to better fit the company's evolving operational model. Helen Park, our Director of Quality Assurance, a woman who had been with the company for 19 years and who could spot a defective part from across the room, was restructured into a Senior Quality Analyst role. Same work, less pay, less authority, no direct reports. She was furious, but she was also 57 and knew that finding an equivalent position at her age would be rough. Dan Briggs, our head of supply chain, 17 years with the company, was moved to supply chain coordinator. His responsibilities were handed to Blake, who had never managed a supply chain in his life, and who, within 3 weeks, double-ordered 6 months' worth of raw aluminum because he didn't understand our purchasing cycles. That surplus cost the company about $90,000 in carrying costs and wasted warehouse space. And then there was me. Junior called me into his office on a Wednesday, the office that used to be Ray's. He'd redecorated. Gone were Ray's photos of the original warehouse, the old blueprint of the first product line, the framed newspaper clipping from when the company hit its first $1 million in revenue. In their place, abstract art, a glass desk, and one of those ridiculous standing desk converters that he never actually used in the standing position. It looked like a Silicon Valley office had sneezed on a manufacturing company. He said, "Garrett, I've been reviewing the organizational structure, and I think we need to make some changes to position the company for the future." I said, "Okay." He said, "I'm restructuring the operations division. Preston is going to be overseeing operations going forward as Director of Operational Excellence. I think your experience and institutional knowledge would be best applied in a more focused, hands-on capacity." I waited. He said, "I'm moving you to a senior associate role. You'll still be involved in operations, but you'll be reporting to Preston." Senior associate. I'd been VP of operations for 13 years. I'd helped grow the company from 80 million to 220 million in revenue. I'd managed 2 plants, 240 people, and the entire production apparatus of the company. And Junior was demoting me to senior associate, a title we normally give to people 3 years out of college, and asking me to report to a guy who'd taken a photo of a CNC lathe like it was the Eiffel Tower. I sat there for a moment. I could feel the anger, hot, immediate, the kind that makes your jaw tight and your hands heavy. But I didn't say anything stupid. I'd been in manufacturing long enough to know that the moment you lose your composure is the moment you lose your position. And I'd been watching Junior long enough to know this was coming. He was clearing the board. So I said, "I understand. When does this take effect?" He looked surprised. I think he expected me to argue, maybe even quit. A lot of guys in my position would have. Helen had cried. Dan had shouted. But I just sat there, calm, quiet. He said, "Effective next Monday." I said, "Okay. I have one question." He said, "Sure." I said, "When's the next board meeting?" He frowned. Like the question didn't compute. He said, "The quarterly board meeting is in 3 weeks. Why?" I said, "Just curious. I want to make sure I understand the company's direction." He nodded, clearly confused but not concerned. Why would he be? I was just the old guard, the relic, the guy who'd been building this company since before Junior finished high school. What threat could I possibly pose? He had no idea. This is where 23 years of stock buying becomes the most important detail in the entire story. Garrett never talked about his shares at work, never brought it up. His statements went to his home address. The stock program was administered through an outside firm, so even the company's finance team didn't have a clear picture of individual holdings. Junior inherited a company. He knew the org chart, the revenue, the board composition, or thought he did. What he did not know was that a quiet operations VP had been accumulating shares for 2 decades. Junior was playing checkers on a board he didn't even own. I went home that night and sat at the kitchen table with Laura. I told her about the demotion. She was angry, angrier than me actually, which is saying something because Laura is generally the calm one in our marriage. She said, "After everything you've given that company, 23 years and he demotes you to senior associate?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Something I've been thinking about for a while." I went to the filing cabinet in our home office. I pulled out 23 years of annual stock statements, every single one, and I laid them out on the kitchen table. It took up the whole table. Laura had to move the salt and pepper shakers. Here's what 23 years of consistent stock purchasing looks like when you do the math. At 10% of my salary, starting at $38,000 and gradually increasing to $162,000, with a 15% discount on every purchase, and with the stock price roughly quadrupling over the period due to company growth, my accumulated position was significant, very significant. I'll give you the number because I think it matters. My shares represented approximately 8.6% of the total outstanding stock. 8.6%. In a company where Ray still held about 31%, and a handful of early investors and board members held chunks ranging from 2 to 12%. The second largest individual shareholder was a board member named Phyllis Keegan, who held about 11%. The third largest was an original investor named Don Crawford, with about 9%. And the fourth largest? That was me, at 8.6%. Except, and this is the part that mattered, Don had recently sold about a quarter of his shares through the internal buyback program to fund his retirement. His position had dropped to roughly 6.5% by the time of the quarterly meeting, which made me, Garrett the freshly demoted senior associate, the third largest individual shareholder in the company. I called the company's stock administrator the next morning. I asked to confirm my total share count and my voting rights. Everything was in order. Every share I'd purchased over 23 years carried full voting rights. I also confirmed something I'd suspected, but wanted to be sure about. The company's bylaws allowed any shareholder with more than 5% ownership to request a formal agenda item at a board meeting, provided they submitted it in writing at least 10 business days before the meeting. I submitted my agenda item the next day. It read, "Motion to evaluate current executive leadership and consider a change in CEO appointment." I submitted it through the stock administrator, who forwarded it to the board secretary. The board secretary was required by the bylaws to include it on the agenda. No discretion, no approval needed from the CEO. It was an automatic right of any qualifying shareholder. And then I waited. The 3 weeks between my demotion and the board meeting were strange. I showed up to work every day in my new senior associate role. I reported to Preston, who had no idea how to run operations and who spent most of his time in meetings with Junior and Blake discussing synergy frameworks. Meanwhile, production was slipping. On-time delivery rates dropped from 94% to 81% in just 2 weeks. 2 long-term customers, companies we'd supplied for over a decade, called to express concerns about quality and delivery reliability. One of them said, and I'm paraphrasing, "What on earth is going on over there?" I documented everything. Every missed shipment, every quality issue, every customer complaint, every decision Preston made that I would have handled differently. Not out of spite, out of preparation. Because I knew that when the board meeting came, I'd need more than just shares. I'd need evidence, data, a clear, undeniable picture of what Junior's leadership was doing to the company Ray had spent 50 years building. Helen and Dan both came to me separately during those 3 weeks. They knew something was happening. They'd heard through the grapevine that a shareholder had submitted an agenda item about executive leadership. They didn't know it was me. Nobody did. I kept it quiet. I didn't want Junior to have time to prepare, to politic, to work the board members in advance. I wanted the full weight of the moment to land without warning. The night before the board meeting, I pressed my best suit. Laura watched me from the doorway of our bedroom and said, "You look like you're going to a trial." I said, "I kind of am." She said, "Are you nervous?" I said, "No." And I meant it. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. I'd been ready for 23 years. I just didn't know it until now. Right! So let me paint this picture because I don't want anyone to miss what's about to happen. A quarterly board meeting. Around the table, board members, Ray Whitmore, the retired founder, Junior, the new CEO, the trio, Junior's MBA buddies who have been running the place into the ground for 2 months. And then the door opens, and in walks Garrett, the guy Junior demoted to senior associate 3 weeks ago. Except he isn't there as an employee. He's there as the 3rd largest individual shareholder. He's got a suit, a stack of documents, and 23 years of quiet patience that is about to become very, very loud. The board meeting was held in the main conference room at our headquarters. Long table, leather chairs, a projector setup that nobody ever got to work on the first try. Standard stuff. I'd been in that room hundreds of times for operational reviews, but I'd never been in it for a board meeting. Employees didn't attend board meetings. Shareholders did. I arrived 10 minutes early. The board secretary, a woman named Gail, who'd been handling board administration for 15 years, saw me walk in and did a double take. She said, "Garrett, can I help you?" I said, "I'm here for the board meeting. I'm the shareholder who submitted the agenda item." She looked at her paperwork. Then she looked at me. Then she looked at her paperwork again. She said, You have 8.6%? I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said very quietly, "Well, that's something." I took a seat. Not at the main table. I didn't want to be presumptuous. I sat in one of the chairs along the wall, reserved for observers and presenters. I had a folder with me. Inside, my stock statements, the company's operational performance data from the past 2 months, the customer complaints, the financial impact of Blake's aluminum overordering disaster, and the bylaw provision authorizing my agenda item and my voting rights. The board members filtered in. Phyllis Keegan was there. Don Crawford was on speakerphone. 2 independent board members. Ray walked in slowly. He leaned on a cane now, but his eyes were sharp. He saw me and raised an eyebrow. Not hostile, curious. Ray had always been observant. Junior walked in last, flanked by Blake and Preston. He was carrying a tablet and wearing the confidence of a man who believed the room belonged to him. He saw me, and his expression flickered. Confusion, annoyance, dismissal, all in about half a second. He said, "Garrett, I think you may be in the wrong meeting." I said, "I'm not." He laughed, like I'd told a mildly amusing joke, and sat down at the head of the table. Gail called the meeting to order. They ran through the standard agenda items, financial review, quarterly earnings, operational updates, which Junior had Preston present, and which were, to be blunt, a disaster disguised in optimistic language. Then Gail said, "We have one additional agenda item, submitted by a qualifying shareholder. The item is a motion to evaluate current executive leadership and consider a change in CEO appointment. The submitting shareholder is Garrett Coe." Every head in the room turned to me. Junior's face went from confusion to something I can only describe as the expression of a man who just realized the ground beneath him isn't as solid as he thought. I stood up, I walked to the table, and I spoke. I didn't shout. I didn't get emotional. I presented data. 2 months of operational performance under Junior's leadership. On-time delivery down 13 percentage points. 2 major customer relationships at risk. A $90,000 surplus aluminum mistake. 3 senior leaders with a combined 59 years of experience demoted and replaced by consultants with 0 manufacturing background. Employee morale scores, which I'd gathered informally but accurately, at their lowest point in the company's recent history. I laid it out piece by piece, calmly, factually, like I was presenting a production efficiency report, which in a way I was. I'd been reading production reports for 23 years. I knew how to present data that told a story, and this data told a very clear story. Junior was dismantling the operational foundation of a company his father spent 50 years building. When I finished, Junior tried to respond. He said something about growing pains and necessary restructuring and long-term strategic vision. But the numbers were on the table, and numbers don't care about your MBA. Then I said the words that mattered. As the holder of 8.6% of outstanding company shares, I move for a formal vote of no confidence in the current CEO and a motion to remove him from the position. Junior went pale, actually pale, like the blood left his face in real time. He looked at his father. Ray was looking at me, not angry, not surprised, almost, and I know this sounds strange, almost proud, like he was watching someone do exactly what he would have done in the same situation. Ray had spent 50 years building a company by being tough and smart and strategic. I think in that moment he recognized the same qualities in someone else. The vote happened. Phyllis voted yes. Don, on speakerphone, voted yes. One of the independent board members voted yes. Ray, and this was the moment that mattered most. Ray voted yes. His own son. He voted to remove his own son as CEO. I could see the pain in his face, but I could also see the clarity. He loved his son, but he loved his company too. And his company was being destroyed. Junior voted no. Blake and Preston weren't board members, so they didn't vote. The other independent board member abstained. The motion passed, 4-1, with 1 abstention. Junior was removed as CEO effective immediately. He sat there for about 30 seconds after the vote, not saying anything. Then he stood up, took his tablet, and walked out. Blake and Preston followed him like ducklings, who just lost their mother duck. An interim CEO was appointed that afternoon, Phyllis Keegan, who had extensive manufacturing industry experience and who, frankly, should have been considered for the role before Junior. Within a week, Phyllis reversed the demotions. Helen was restored to Director of Quality Assurance. Dan was restored to Head of Supply Chain. And I was restored to VP of Operations. The trio, Blake, Preston, and Keith, were let go within 2 weeks. Keith, the workforce optimization guy, didn't even have time to optimize his own severance package. Aftermath. It's been about 4 months now. The company is recovering. On-time delivery is back up to 92% and climbing. The 2 customer relationships that were at risk have been stabilized. It took some personal visits and a lot of honest conversation, but we kept them. The surplus aluminum is being worked through slowly. Morale is better, not perfect. The whole episode left scars, but better. Ray is still on the board. He and I had a conversation a few days after the meeting. Just the 2 of us, in his old office, which Phyllis hadn't redecorated. Smart woman. He said, "Garrett, how long have you been buying stock?" I said, "Since my first paycheck." He laughed. Not a big laugh. He's not that kind of guy, but a real one. He said, "Your father was a machinist, wasn't he?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "He taught you well." That was it. That was the whole conversation. It was enough. Junior hasn't been back to the company. I heard through the grapevine that he's consulting again, which feels right. Some people are better at telling others how to run things than actually running things themselves. I still buy stock every paycheck. 10%. Same as always. Laura asked me if I was ever going to stop. I said, "My dad told me to buy it like oxygen. You don't stop breathing." My son is 19 now. He's in college. Last month he asked me for advice about his first job, a part-time thing at a local hardware store. I told him the same thing my dad told me. If they offer you stock at a discount, buy it. Every paycheck. Don't think about it. Don't touch it. 20 years from now, you'll thank me. He said, Dad, it's a hardware store. They don't offer stock. I said, okay, then save 10% of every check. Same principle. He rolled his eyes. He'll learn. One more thing. About a week after the board meeting, Helen, the quality director who'd been demoted and then restored, stopped by my office. She closed the door and said, Garrett, how much stock do you actually own? I told her. She stared at me for a solid 5 seconds. Then she said, You've been sitting on that for 23 years and you never told anyone? I said, Nobody ever asked. She shook her head and said, You are the most patient person I've ever met in my life, and also slightly terrifying. I said, Thank you. She said, It wasn't entirely a compliment. I said, I know, I'll take it anyway. Dan came by later that same day. He'd heard from Helen. Of course he had. Those two are the company gossip pipeline, always have been. He said, Is it true you're the third largest shareholder? I said, It is. He said, And you've just been sitting here, at your desk, for 23 years, buying stock? I said, I was also doing my job, Dan. He laughed so hard he had to sit down. My dad passed away in 2019. He never got to see this chapter. But I think he'd have appreciated it. Not the drama, he wasn't a drama guy, but the principle. That consistency beats flash. That showing up and doing the quiet, boring, steady thing for 20 years can position you in ways that no amount of short-term cleverness can match. Junior had the name, the title, the MBA, and the corner office. I had a payroll deduction and patience. And in the end, patience won. Laura framed one of my stock statements, the most recent one, the one that shows the full 23-year accumulation. It's hanging in our home office next to my dad's retirement photo. 2 blue-collar families, 2 generations, same lesson. Buy the stock, do the work, and wait. Sometimes the wait is what matters most. Final update. There was one moment I haven't mentioned because I've been saving it. During the board meeting, after the vote, when Junior was walking out and the room was dead silent, Ray looked at me from across the table. He didn't say anything. He just nodded. One slow nod. And then he looked away. I've thought about that nod every day since. I think it meant thank you. I think it meant I'm sorry it came to this. And I think, somewhere in there, it meant something else. A recognition that the company he'd built from nothing in a rented warehouse was going to survive. Not because of bloodline or business school, but because some kid he hired in 2003 loved the work enough to stay for 23 years and care enough to fight for it when it mattered. I'll probably stay at this company until I retire. I'll keep buying stock every paycheck. And when the time comes, I'll cash it all out, just like my dad did, and Laura and I will live without worry. That's the plan. Not flashy, not complicated, but it works. If you've read this far, here's my question. Have you ever had a long game moment? Something you did consistently for years that finally paid off in a big way? Or are you still in the middle of your long game? I'd love to hear about it. I think more people are playing the long game than they realize. They just haven't gotten to the part where it matters yet. 23 years. 276 paychecks. 10% every single time. No exceptions, no withdrawals, no shortcuts. And when the moment came, when the guy with the corner office and the MBA tried to push him out, Garrett didn't argue, didn't shout, didn't quit. He showed up to a board meeting with a folder and a voting stake that nobody saw coming. The founder voted to remove his own son. The old guard was restored. And the quiet guy who'd been buying stock like it was oxygen turned out to be the most powerful person in the room who wasn't named Whitmore. This might be the single greatest example of play stupid games, win stupid prizes I've ever covered. Except Garrett wasn't playing a stupid game. He was playing the longest game. And he won. Drop a comment and tell me about your long game. What are you building quietly right now that nobody sees coming? Subscribe and I'll see you in the next one. I put my brother in the hospital. After he screwed my wife and bragged, "You know I always get what I want." My family took his side and tried to get me thrown in jail, so I made them regret it. Sup, Reddit. This happened about 2 years ago. I was a pilot living what I thought was a pretty straightforward life. Then I came home early from a flight. That day messed up everything. I, 31 male, have been with my wife Bridget, 29 female, for just over 2 years. Met at a friend's birthday, hit it off, moved in together after 8 months. We did the courthouse wedding before one of my long rotations. Just made sense for benefits and paperwork. She was a physical therapist. I was flying international routes. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our plans. Normal couple stuff. I wasn't supposed to be home. My rotation had me scheduled for another 2 days. Singapore to LAX, then a layover before heading back. 18-hour flights, cramped cockpits, recycled air. The usual. But my airline had staffing issues, last-minute schedule swaps, and suddenly I'm landing at LAX 48 hours early on a Tuesday afternoon. I texted Bridget from the airport. Home early. See you soon. Read 3:12 p.m. No response. Whatever. She was probably elbow deep in someone's rotator cuff. Physical therapy sessions ran long sometimes, especially with the geriatric crowd who liked to chat about their grandkids while she stretched their frozen shoulders. The house is in my name. She'd been living there for over a year, but she wasn't on the deed or the mortgage. Same goes for my parents' situation, actually. I'd been helping them with their mortgage for years. Troy, too. Funny how that works. Grabbed an Uber. Driver didn't talk, which was perfect. I just stared out the window at the 4:05 traffic, thinking about sleep, my own bed, my own shower, maybe ordering Thai food and watching something brainless on Netflix. My neighborhood was quiet when we pulled up. Tuesday at 3 p.m., everyone at work. My house looked exactly like I'd left it. Lawn slightly overgrown because I kept forgetting to call the landscaping guy. Potted plants on the porch that Bridget bought and immediately stopped watering. I paid the driver, grabbed my suitcase, walked up to the front door. Key in the lock. Turn. Click. Door swings open. I tossed my keys on the table by the entrance. They landed with that familiar metallic clink. Rolled my suitcase into the hallway, noticed Bridget's yoga mat was still in the corner where she'd left it last week. The house smelled like her vanilla candles. Everything normal. Everything fine. That's when I heard it. Upstairs. From my bedroom. Sounds. The kind you can't mistake for anything else. You know what I mean. I stood there in the hallway, hand still on my suitcase handle, just listening, hoping I was wrong, hoping it was the TV, hoping it was literally anything else. Couple seconds of denial before reality kicked in. I wasn't imagining anything. I took the stairs slowly, each step quiet. My heart was pounding, but my head was clear. The bedroom door was half open. I could see part of the bed through the gap. Movement. Sheets. I pushed the door wider. Bridget, my wife. The woman I'd spent just over 2 years with. The woman who'd cried when I proposed at that overpriced restaurant in Santa Monica. In my bed. With my brother, Troy. They didn't hear me at first. Took them maybe 3 full seconds to realize someone was standing in the doorway. 3 seconds of me watching these two people blow up my entire life. Bridget saw me first. Her face went white. She gasped, scrambled, shoved Troy off her like he was on fire. Troy turned, made eye contact with me. And here's the thing about Troy, my younger brother. The golden child who never had to work for anything because someone always bailed him out. Failed out of community college twice. Lost 4 jobs in 3 years. Still drove a truck I helped him finance because his credit was garbage. This was the guy now sitting naked in my bed. He looked at me and said, real calm. You know I always get what I want. Not sorry. Not shocked. Just stating a fact. Like he was ordering coffee. Something clicked in my head. Not rage. Something colder. I felt my jaw set. Get out of my house. His face shifted. The smug look flickered. What are you? Get out of my house. Both of you. Bridget grabbed the sheet, clutching it to her chest. Her voice cracked. Baby, please, just wait. Let me explain. Don't. I held up a hand. You need to leave. If you refuse, I'm calling the police to document this and have you both removed. This is my home, too. Bridget started crying, mascara running. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Please just listen to me. 10 minutes. Clock's ticking. Troy stood up, pulling on his jeans. His hands were shaking slightly. Tried to laugh it off. Bro, come on, let's talk about this like adults. We're not bros. And you've got nothing I want to hear. She's mine now, all right? Deal with it. Troy stepped toward me, voice getting louder, more aggressive, getting in my face. She chose me. I didn't move, didn't flinch, just looked at him. Last warning, get out. Troy kept coming. His eyes were wild now, breathing hard, face getting red. You always get everything. The house, the job, Dad's respect. I'm sick of it. I stood my ground, hands at my sides. You need to leave. Now. Or what? Troy's voice cracked. He was getting worked up, almost manic. You gonna hit me? Go ahead. Give me a reason. I'm going to call the police. Your choice. Just listen to him, Bridget screamed from the bedroom. Troy, stop! Just stop, please! Troy shoved me, both hands on my chest. Hard. I stumbled back but kept my footing. He came at me again, grabbed my shirt, tried to slam me against the wall. His other hand wound back like he was going to swing. I reacted, grabbed his wrist, twisted, used his momentum against him. Basic stuff. He was off balance, overcommitted. I swept his leg and shoved. He went down wrong. Head hit the corner of the hallway table. The wooden edge caught him right at the temple. Blood showed up fast. A lot of it. Bridget screamed from the bedroom doorway. Oh my God, Troy! I stepped back, put my hands up, looked at my brother bleeding on my floor. Don't move him! What did you do? Bridget was hysterical now, crawling toward Troy. What did you do to him? He attacked me. I defended myself. I pulled out my phone. Dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? My brother attacked me in my home. He shoved me twice and tried to hit me. I defended myself and he fell. He's bleeding from his head. I need an ambulance and police. I gave them my address. I need this documented. He became violent when I asked him to leave. Bridget looked up at me, eyes wild. You called the cops? Are you insane? Back away from him. Don't move his neck. Don't tell me what to do. Spine injury protocol. Move and you could paralyze him. But hey, your call. She froze, hands hovering over Troy. The dispatcher kept me on the line, asked questions. I answered every single one. Clear, calm, detailed. What happened? How he shoved me twice. How he tried to swing on me. How I defended myself. Troy was groaning now, conscious but dazed, hand reaching for his head. Don't touch it, I told him. Still on the phone with 911. You're bleeding. Paramedics are coming. Congratulations on your life choices. Bridget was sobbing, rocking back and forth. This is your fault. This is all your fault. My fault? I looked at her. Interesting perspective. You were in my bed with my brother, but sure. My fault. We didn't mean for this to happen. Get dressed. You're leaving. I need to go with him. You're not going anywhere with him. Get dressed. Now. She stared at me, then scrambled back into the bedroom. The dispatcher asked if Troy was breathing normally. I watched his chest rise and fall. Yes, breathing is steady, but there's significant bleeding from the temple area. Help is nearby, she said. I could hear the sirens getting closer. The sound bounced off the houses in my neighborhood. Troy's breathing had gotten louder, more labored. His fingers kept twitching. Bridget came back out, threw on whatever clothes were closest. She kept looking between me and Troy, like she couldn't figure out which one to focus on. Bridget came back out wearing jeans and a shirt, still crying, makeup destroyed. She knelt next to Troy, but didn't touch him, just kept whispering, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I stayed exactly where I was, back against the wall, phone to my ear, marks on my chest where he'd shoved me. The dispatcher asked if I was in immediate danger. No, he's on the ground, I'm maintaining distance. Stay on the line until officers arrive? I heard the sirens before I saw the lights, red and blue flashing through the front windows. The sound got louder, closer, then stopped right outside. Bridget looked at me, desperate. Please, please tell them it was an accident. Please. I said nothing, just waited. Paramedics first, then cops. I was still standing in the same spot, hands visible, phone in one hand, the 911 call still active. The paramedics went straight to Troy, started assessing, neck brace, backboard, the whole protocol. One of them kept shining a light in his eyes, checking his pupils. Possible TBI, we need to move now. 2 officers approached me. You the homeowner? Yes. What happened? I came home early, found my wife in bed with my brother, told them both to leave. My brother became aggressive. He shoved me twice and tried to swing on me. I defended myself and he fell, hit his head on the table. One officer pulled out a notepad, started writing. The other one scanned the hallway, looked at the blood on the floor, looked at the table, looked at me. You have security cameras? Yeah. Full smart home setup, motion activated, cloud storage. Everything's time-stamped with audio. The officer's posture changed, got more professional. We'll need to see that footage. Already pulled it up on my phone. Want me to send you the login credentials or show you now? Where's your wife now? Bedroom. One officer went to talk to Bridget. The other stayed with me. Any cameras? Yeah. I travel for work, so I had a full interior security setup installed. Motion-triggered clips, cloud storage, audio, Everything's time-stamped. The officer nodded. Made notes. We'll need access to that footage. Whatever you need, I have nothing to hide. Troy was loaded onto a stretcher, still conscious but not making much sense, slurring his words. Blood matted in his hair. Neck immobilized. One of the paramedics looked concerned. Possible skull fracture? We're going to Cedars-Sinai. The officers asked more questions. I answered everything. Showed them the marks on my chest where Troy had shoved me. Red marks, already starting to bruise. Had them photograph it. Gave them my phone to access the smart home footage. Showed them the doorbell camera app. The officer who'd gone to talk to Bridget came back. She confirms your brother was here. Says they've been seeing each other for a while. Says you came home, got angry, that things escalated. Claims you attacked him. I looked at him. Checked the footage. It'll show exactly what happened. He shoved me. Twice. Then grabbed my shirt and tried to swing. I defended myself. The officer pulled up the video on my phone. Watched it twice. Showed it to his partner. They both nodded. Everything documented. Everything time-stamped. The officers finished their notes. We'll be in touch if we have more questions. You can file a formal complaint for the assault if you choose to. I want to cooperate fully. I'll sign whatever you need. One of them nodded. We'll include that in the report. Bridget tried to leave with the ambulance. I blocked the doorway. Keys, phone, now. What? No. I need to go with him. You need to get out of my house. Please. Her voice broke. She grabbed my arm. Please don't do this. I made a mistake. I'll do anything. I pulled my arm away, held out my hand. House key, car key if you drove here. Hand them over. She fumbled with her key ring, hands shaking so bad she dropped it twice. Where am I supposed to go? I don't have anywhere. Not my problem. Should have thought about that before. Baby, please. She was full on sobbing now, snot running down her face. I love you. I made a mistake. It was just one time. Please don't throw away 3 years. One time? I looked at her. This was the first time? She couldn't meet my eyes. That's what I thought. I gestured to the counter. Keys. Now. She placed the house key on the kitchen counter, hands trembling. Can I get some of my things? 5 minutes. Then you're out. 5 minutes? All my stuff is here. Should have thought about that. She ran upstairs. I heard drawers opening, things being thrown into bags. She came back down with a duffel bag, mascara streaked down her face, eyes red and swollen. Please, she tried one more time, standing in my doorway, voice barely a whisper. Please, can we just talk about this tomorrow? When you've calmed down? I am calm. Get out. I'm begging you. I know. Leave. She stood there, mouth opening and closing, looking for words that didn't exist. Out. Now. She stumbled out the door, stood on the porch for a moment, turned back. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I closed the door in her face, locked it. The officers were still there, finishing up paperwork. One of them looked at me. You need anything else from us? No. I have everything I need. We'll be in touch. They left. I stood in my hallway, blood still on the floor and table. Stared at it for a long time. Then I got cleaning supplies from under the sink and scrubbed until it was gone. I didn't sleep that night. Sat on my couch with all the lights on, going through the smart home footage frame by frame. Saved everything to 3 different cloud storage accounts. Made copies on 2 external hard drives. Backed it up to a USB drive I put in my safety deposit box the next morning. The footage was crystal clear. Audio and video. Troy following me into the hallway. Him shoving me. Him grabbing my shirt and winding up to swing. Me defending myself. Him falling backward, head connecting with the table corner. The sickening thud. Him going down. Self-defense. Clear as day. I watched it 12 times. Noted every timestamp. Every moment Troy initiated contact. Every time I gave him a chance to walk away. Every second that proved I'd tried to avoid confrontation. Labeled each file with date, time, location. Created a master document listing every piece of evidence I had. The videos. The photos of my injuries. The 911 call recording. The police report number. Officer names and badge numbers. Even downloaded the Uber receipt showing exactly when I'd arrived home. Around 4 a.m., I started making a timeline. Wrote down everything in chronological order. When I texted Bridget, when the Uber picked me up, when I entered the house, when I heard the sounds, when I walked upstairs, every single detail with timestamps, printed it out, made 3 copies, put 1 in my safe, 1 in the safety deposit box, 1 with my important documents at work. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. Mom. I let it ring. She called again and again. Then Dad called. Then Monica. Then Piper. I silenced them all. Made coffee, sat at my kitchen table. My phone buzzed with a text. Mom, Troy is in the hospital. Call me immediately. I didn't respond. Dad, what did you do to your brother? Didn't respond. Monica, we need to talk. Now. Didn't respond. Around 8 a.m., I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Answered it. This is calling from Cedars-Sinai. I'm calling about your brother Troy. He still had you listed as emergency contact from years ago. He gave consent at intake. Are you able to discuss his condition? He never updated anything in his life. Troy still had me listed as emergency contact from years back. What's his condition? He has a severe concussion and a skull fracture. We had to relieve pressure on his brain. He's stable now, but there are complications. The impact caused some bleeding. We're monitoring him closely. Complications? It's too early to know the full extent, but there may be permanent effects. We'll know more in the coming days. I thanked them and hung up. The calls kept coming. Every few minutes. Different family members taking turns. I watched the phone light up over and over. Sip my coffee. Around 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. Mom and Dad. Standing on my porch. Dad had that look on his face. The one that meant he was about to lecture me. I didn't open the door. They knocked. Rang the bell again. Knocked harder. We know you're in there, Dad called out. Open this door right now. I sat back down on my couch. Turned on the TV. Volume up. They stayed for 20 minutes. Banging. Yelling. Eventually left. My phone buzzed again. Monica this time. We're worried about you. Please just let us know you're okay. The switch from aggressive to concerned. Classic manipulation. I'd seen this playbook before. I deleted the message. An hour later, a new text. Dad, your brother has a concussion, a skull fracture, and they had to drill into his head to relieve pressure. We need to discuss what happened. I took a screenshot. Saved it to a folder labeled Evidence. The messages kept rolling in throughout the day. Different tactics. Mom trying guilt. Dad trying anger. Monica trying reason. Piper trying sympathy. They rotated like they'd coordinated their approach. Probably had a group chat going where they strategized about how to crack me. I screenshotted everything, added each one to my growing evidence folder, created subfolders, organized by sender, by date, by tone. The angrier they got, the more documentation I collected. Every threat, every accusation, every attempt to paint me as the villain. All saved, all time-stamped, all backed up in multiple locations. By noon, I had 47 messages. By 3 p.m., it was over 80. My sister sent paragraphs about family loyalty, about how Troy needed support, about how I was being cruel. Not one of them mentioned what Troy had done. Not one acknowledged that he'd attacked me. It was all about how I'd hurt him, how I'd overreacted, how I needed to fix this. That afternoon, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. This is a detective with LAPD. I'd like to ask you some questions about an incident yesterday involving your brother. I'll cooperate. I'm not answering detailed questions without counsel. Pause on the other end. That's your right. When can you come to the station? I'll have my lawyer contact you. You already have a lawyer? My airline has a legal plan. I'll be in touch within 24 hours. I hung up. Called the union immediately. Explained the situation. They connected me with a lawyer who specialized in self-defense cases. Former prosecutor. Knew his stuff. We met that evening at a coffee shop. I showed him everything. The footage. The photos of my injuries. The 911 call recording. The police report. My lawyer watched the video 3 times. This is clean. He attacked you. You defended yourself. He fell. My family is going to push for charges. Let them try. He leaned back. You've got documentation they'd kill for in court. Time-stamped video, audio, independent witness statements from the officers who responded. You called 911 yourself. You stayed at the scene. You cooperated fully. This is textbook self-defense. What do I do? Nothing. Let me handle the police. Don't talk to your family. Don't explain yourself. Don't apologize. And for the love of God, don't go near your brother. I nodded. One more thing, my lawyer said. Your wife, the marriage? Short. Just over 2 years. She wasn't on the deed or mortgage. Separate property. I need to file. File for divorce. Immediately. California is a no-fault state, but you need to get ahead of this. She might try to claim marital assets or support. File first, establish the timeline, and make it clear the marriage ended the moment you caught her in your bed with your brother. What about her stuff? Box it up. Put it in storage. Send her the location and bill her for it. Or leave it on the curb with a text. Either way, document everything. I left the meeting oddly calm. I had evidence. I had counsel. I had followed every rule. My phone was blowing up when I got home. 15 missed calls. 30 texts. Monica. The police called Mom and Dad. They want to interview us about what Troy said about you. Piper. Why do you need a lawyer if you didn't do anything wrong? Dad. Lawyering up makes you look guilty. If you have nothing to hide, just talk to the police. I screenshotted every message, added them to my evidence folder. Then I typed one message to the family group chat. My lawyer will handle all communication with police. Do not contact me directly. Any further contact will be considered harassment and documented accordingly. Sent. Muted the chat. Monica tried calling immediately. I declined. She texted, "You can't just cut us off like this. We're your family." I didn't respond. Dad called from 3 different numbers. I declined all of them. Blocked the numbers. That night, someone sent me a message from an account I didn't recognize. Troy is devastated. He can't believe you're doing this. He just wants to apologize. I blocked the account. My neighbor knocked on my door around 8 p.m. "Hey man, everything okay? I heard sirens yesterday." "Yeah, had an incident with my brother. It's handled." The cops talked to me, asked if I heard anything. "What did you tell them?" "The truth. I heard yelling, heard a crash, saw the ambulance, saw you talking to the cops, looking calm, saw them taking photos of your chest. Thanks. You need anything?" "No, but thanks for asking." He left. I added his statement to my mental checklist. Another witness. Another piece that backed up my story. Before bed, I called my lawyer. "I want to file for divorce. Tomorrow. I'll have the paperwork ready by noon. We'll cite irreconcilable differences and include a sworn statement about what you witnessed. That way it's on the record." Good. The next morning, I boxed up all of Bridget's stuff. Every piece of clothing, every toiletry, every book, every picture. Found stuff she'd left in the bathroom, in the closet, under the bed. Her ridiculous collection of scented candles. Her yoga equipment. The framed photos of us from better times. Took me 4 hours. Loaded it all into my car and drove it to a storage facility. Paid for 1 month. Sent her a text with the address and unit number. "Your belongings are here. You have 30 days before I stop paying for it. Do not contact me. All communication goes through my attorney." She called immediately. I didn't answer. She texted, "Please, can we just talk? I made a mistake. It meant nothing." I forwarded her message to my lawyer. He sent her the divorce papers by end of day. My lawyer called me 4 days after the incident. Talked to the detective. The DA reviewed everything and decided not to file charges. "Your video makes it impossible to claim aggression on your part." Just like that? Not quite. They interviewed your family. Your parents gave statements supporting Troy's version. Said you have anger issues, that Troy was just trying to calm you down. The detective asked for evidence. They had none. Meanwhile, you've got video, audio, injuries, 911 call, independent witnesses. Case closed. Interesting. They tried to file a false report against me. They did, and I've documented that. If they try again, we have grounds for a harassment case. What about Troy's condition? My lawyer paused. The hospital report came through. Traumatic brain injury, chronic vertigo, balance problems, cognitive issues. Can't drive. Lost his job because he can't pass the physical anymore. He's on disability. Can I still pursue the assault charge? The DA can file based on your signed complaint and the evidence. The video's a slam dunk, but it'll take time. Court dates, testimony, the whole process. He'd be looking at probation, anger management, possible jail time depending on the judge. Do it. You sure? He attacked me in my home after sleeping with my wife, and my family tried to have me arrested for defending myself. Yes, I'm sure. All right. I'll coordinate with the DA's office. He'll be served this week. I hung up. My airline called later that day. HR wanted to check in. They'd heard about the incident through the grapevine. Some crew member who knew my family somehow. I gave them the short version. Explained I'd defended myself. Mentioned the police report cleared me. They were professional about it. Said to take whatever time I needed. Asked if I wanted access to the employee assistance program. I declined. Went back to work the following week. Singapore rotation again. Same routes, same airports. Walking through Changi felt different somehow. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. Grabbed my usual coffee at the gate. Checked the weather reports. Did my pre-flight inspection. Normal routine. But I kept thinking about Troy bleeding on my floor. About Bridget's face when she saw me standing there. Flying helped. Up at altitude, focused on instruments and navigation. There wasn't room to think about anything else. My co-pilot on that trip was solid. Good pilot. Didn't ask questions. We kept it professional. Landed smooth in Singapore. checked into the crew hotel, slept for 10 hours straight. The next morning, I got a frantic call from Dad. I answered it. "You're actually going through with charges against your own brother?" His voice was shaking with rage. "The DA is filing. I cooperated with their investigation. He's in the hospital. He's disabled. Haven't you done enough?" "He attacked me. In my home. After sleeping with my wife. And you tried to have me arrested. So no, I haven't done enough. If you go through with this, we're done. You're not my son anymore. Fine by me. But you should know. I've been covering your mortgage for years now. $2,000 a month. Troy's car insurance. His phone bill. I'm not funding people who are actively trying to ruin my life." Silence on the other end. "Your choice, Dad. Leave me alone or figure out how to cover those expenses yourselves." He hung up. 2 days later, my lawyer called back. "Troy was served this morning, at your parents' house. He's living with them now." "How'd he take it?" The process server said he looked shocked. Like he couldn't believe you'd actually go through with it. "Your mother tried to refuse the papers on his behalf. The server explained that's not how it works." "Good. Court date is set for 6 weeks from now. Preliminary hearing. Troy will need to appear. Given his condition, the judge might be sympathetic, but the evidence speaks for itself." The weeks dragged. I picked up extra shifts, flew to Tokyo, Frankfurt, Dubai, kept moving, kept busy, came home to an empty house and didn't mind it, started ordering takeout instead of cooking, let the lawn grow even more overgrown, stopped caring about the small stuff. The divorce proceedings initially dragged on. Paperwork, court delays, the whole deal. Bridget fought it at first, wanted spousal support, wanted to claim she contributed to the household. My lawyer shut it down fast. Short marriage, separate property, clean paper trail. Her lawyer saw the evidence and advised her to settle, told her it would turn into a public mess if she pushed. The sworn statement about what I'd witnessed would become public record, photos attached, police reports attached. Everyone would know. She settled 2 weeks after her lawyer reviewed everything. Clean break, no support, no asset split. She keeps what she brought in. That's it. Her lawyer sent one final email. Bridget wanted to know if we could talk. Just once. To get closure. My lawyer replied on my behalf. No contact, terms are final. Troy's court date arrived on a Wednesday morning. I showed up in a suit. My lawyer met me outside the courthouse. "Remember, don't engage. Don't make eye contact. Let me handle everything." Inside, Troy was already there with a public defender. He looked worse than I'd seen him at the hospital. Thinner. Older somehow. The scar on his forehead was prominent even from across the room. He was sitting down, one hand on the bench for balance. When he saw me, something flickered across his face. Hope, maybe, or desperation. I looked past him. I found a seat on the opposite side of the courtroom. The hearing lasted 30 minutes. Video evidence was presented. The judge watched it twice. Troy's attorney tried arguing that permanent injury was punishment enough. My lawyer countered that assault is assault regardless of outcome. The judge agreed. Troy took a plea deal right there. Misdemeanor assault, probation, community service, anger management classes. Restraining order with no contact terms set for a long time. He stood when the judge read the terms. Had to grab the table. His attorney steadied him. When the judge asked if he understood the terms, his voice cracked. "Yes, Your Honor." I walked out of the courthouse without looking back. Bridget's career didn't survive. About a month after the divorce was filed, word got around. Hospital staff stopped including her in conversations. Referrals dried up. She started getting scheduled for the garbage shifts. Eventually, she left. Called it a mutual decision. Physical therapy is a small world. People talk at conferences. Hiring managers check references quietly. Someone always knows someone. It took a few months, but the whispers followed her. One of my airline buddies had a sister who worked at a different hospital in the same network. Told me Bridget tried getting hired at 3 different clinics in LA. All of them passed. No official reason given. Just never got past the interview stage. Last I heard, she'd moved back to Arizona. Some clinic job making a fraction of what she used to earn. Living with her parents at 29. My family kept trying for a while. New phone numbers, letters, messages through mutual friends. I blocked every number. Returned every letter unopened. Cut off anyone who agreed to pass messages. After I made it clear about the finances, they got quieter. Dad tried calling once more to negotiate. I kept it simple. Stop harassing me, and I keep helping with the mortgage. Come at me legally or keep pushing. I stop immediately. They couldn't afford to lose that income. So they backed off. Monica tried showing up at my airline's crew lounge once. Security stopped her at the entrance. She didn't have credentials. I watched from inside the secure area as she argued with the guard. Eventually, she left. I filed a report with my company, added her name to the unauthorized visitor list. Piper sent one final email 3 months later. Long message about how family should forgive, how everyone makes mistakes, how Troy was suffering, how mom cried every day, how dad's health was declining from the stress, how I needed to be the bigger person. I read it once, deleted it, blocked her email address. Eventually, the attempt stopped. Months passed. I picked up extra shifts at work, flew to Japan, spent a week in Tokyo, started hitting the gym regularly, bought a new car, a Mustang GT with a V8 that growled. Life got quieter, better. Then Christmas rolled around. My new phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered because I wanted to hear what they'd try this time. It's Monica. Before you hang up, just listen. Mom and Dad want you at Christmas dinner. Troy is doing better. He's in therapy. He wants to apologize properly. Please come. Will Troy be there? He's family. Of course he'll be there. I thought about it. They wanted to play happy family. Wanted to pretend everything was fine. Wanted me to sit across from the man who attacked me after sleeping with my wife. But I also wanted to see it. Wanted to see Troy's face. Wanted to watch them squirm. Wanted them to understand that nothing had changed. I'll be there. 6 o'clock. She responded with relief. Thanks. Promises that this would be good for everyone. I wasn't going to reconcile, but I needed them to understand something. Spent the days leading up to Christmas running scenarios in my head. What they'd say. How they'd act. Prepared for every angle. Made sure my car had a full tank in case I needed to leave fast. Put my phone on full charge. Had my lawyer's number ready to dial if anything went sideways. Christmas Eve. I pulled up at 5:55 p.m. Car's already there. Monica's SUV. Piper's sedan. Troy's truck, though someone else had to drive him now. I walked in without knocking. Mom rushed over. Hugged me too long. Too tight. I'm so glad you came. Dad shook my hand. Firm grip. Lots of eye contact. Good to see you, son. And then Troy stood up from the armchair near the fireplace. Slowly, carefully. Had to grab the armrest to steady himself. He looked terrible. Lost weight, dark circles. The scar on his forehead stood out. His hand stayed on the wall for balance. Hey! His voice cracked. I walked past him to the kitchen, grabbed a seltzer from the fridge. Monica and Piper were setting the table. They both looked at me like I was a bomb about to go off. Careful smiles, nervous energy. The whole room felt tight. Everyone moving around each other like we were strangers. We sat down for dinner. Mom had gone all out. Turkey, the whole spread. Dad said grace. Thanked God for family, for forgiveness and new beginnings. I kept my eyes open, stared at my plate. We started eating. Small talk. Monica talked about her kids. Piper mentioned her new job. Dad complained about his back. Mom asked me about flying. I gave one-word answers. Kept my focus on the food. Troy set down his fork. I know this is uncomfortable, but I need to say this. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I destroyed everything. I was wrong. About everything. I attacked you and you defended yourself. I'm in therapy now. I'm working on myself. And I love you. You're my brother. The whole table went quiet. Everyone watching me. Waiting. I turned to Monica. Can you pass the potatoes? Troy stopped, mouth still open. The words just gone. Monica slowly passed the bowl. I spooned potatoes onto my plate. Kept eating. Dad's tone hardened. This is childish. Look at him. He can't work. He can't drive. He's living with Mom and Dad because he can't take care of himself. He's suffered enough. I set down my fork. Looked at Dad. He attacked me. In my own home. After I walked in on him with my wife. And when I defended myself, you all tried to have me arrested. You knew exactly what happened. You just chose to believe I was the bad guy. Even with video evidence. Even with police reports. You picked him. Silence. I stood up. Where are you going? Mom asked, voice rising. I came here tonight to confirm something. And I did. That you all chose him over me. You invited him here knowing what he did. You asked me to sit at this table and eat dinner with a man who assaulted me. And you thought I'd just forgive him? Troy stood. Slowly. Unsteadily. Had to grab the table. Please don't leave. I'll go. I'll leave right now. Just stay. I walked to the door. Dad followed. If you walk out that door, I turned. What? You'll call the cops on me again? Already tried that. Didn't work. The room went silent. I opened the door. Troy was right behind me. Desperate. Moving too fast. He stumbled, caught himself on the doorframe. Wait, please, just one word. Just tell me you hate me. Anything. I looked at him. You know what your problem is, Troy? You always thought you could take whatever you wanted and someone else would clean up the mess. Well, not anymore. I walked out without looking back. The cold air hit me as I stepped off the porch. I got in my car, started the engine. The house was lit up like a Christmas card, perfect and warm and completely fake. I pulled out of the driveway, checked my rearview mirror once. Troy was still standing there, leaning against the doorframe, watching my taillights disappear down the street. By the time I got home, I had 23 missed calls. I blocked every number, canceled the mortgage payments the next morning, canceled Troy's insurance and phone bill. They made their choice when they defended him after he attacked me, when they expected me to pretend everything was fine. I didn't choose this. They did. Now, 2 years after everything went down, I've got a new house, a dog named Maverick, a girlfriend named Harper who respects my boundaries and doesn't push. Built it all after my family tried to destroy me for refusing to be their doormat, and it's better than anything I had before. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.